Okay, I think we'll get started. Good afternoon. Welcome to the panel on sports production. My name is Dave Lennie. I teach television, what are we calling it now? Media production. I teach media production here. The field of sports production is constantly changing, from the addition of augmented reality features like the first down line and floating statistic graphics to the breadth of sports that are now available to watch. Viewers expect a polished production for everything from NFL football to dog agility competitions, which I saw the other day. Furthermore, in recent years, the internet has opened up not only a new avenue for direct delivery to viewers, but a whole new way of producing sports broadcasts with less equipment on site. Here to talk about these and other issues in sports production are, starting at your left there, Brian Scheffler is a 2009 television arts graduate from Bradley. He heads up his own company, Rem Show, providing both remote and on-site production services for Bradley's athletic events, as well as many other regional and national clients. He also recently took on the additional responsibility of running in-house video at the Civic Center Arena. Lee Hall.
Yes.
What are you doing there?
Doing the old run it up your shirt trick.
Oh, okay. Lee Hall has 33 years of service at WEK Channel 25 as a sports reporter, anchor, and photographer. Most of that time as the sports director. As a play-by-play announcer, he has covered everything from Bradley basketball and the Peoria Rivermen to the statewide broadcasts of the IHSA basketball and football championships. Now he is a mild-mannered radio sales agent by day, but by night he is the PA announcer for Bradley men's basketball and play-by-play announcer for several international basketball leagues. I'm looking forward to talking about that. Next to Lee, local production freelancer Corey Rabe has worked in sports production for over 20 years, mainly an audio and camera op. He has worked all around the Midwest, broadcasting college and high school sports to local, regional, and national audiences. Corey ported his broadcast audio knowledge over from the world of live stage music, where he still mixes front-of-house audio for his church and various bands. And then last but not least, recent Steiner School of Sports Communication graduate Joey Wright was involved in all things sports during his time at Bradley, from being on the Braves Vision crew to covering the sports beat for BUTV News and the Bradley Scout. While he was still a student, Joey co-founded Clutch Sports Media, now in its fifth year of producing live streaming coverage of high school sports. He now covers sports and news for the Champaign News Gazette and does some radio work in addition to freelancing for Clutch and Rem Show. Big welcome to our panelists. And you can read more about those guys in your, I had to cut out a lot of stuff. There's lots more to read in the program there. So I might have given away a few of the answers there, but let's start with how you guys got your start in what you're doing. We'll start with Brian.
Yeah, I graduated in 2009. A little bit of a recession going on right before then, and I was going to work for a big TV company in Chicago, but that kind of fell through. So, I mean, long story short, I took out a loan and kind of went feet first into my own thing and somehow made it work. So, yeah, I expanded on that and grown the business, and I just went for it.
Lee.
I'm a townie, as the Bradley kids used to call us. Born and raised here. When I was in high school, I remember talking to a couple of my classmates, and one of them was like a really smart guy, one of the top guys in the class, and we were talking about what we were going to do when we got out of school, out of college eventually. And I said, well, I'd really like to be like a sports play-by-play kind of guy. And Andy Tucker, still remember to this day, said, you'd be really good at that. And I'm like, okay. So that started it, and I went to school for it. I was, the main part of my career, I was a 6 and 10 o'clock sports anchor on the evening news on Channel 25, the NBC affiliate here.
Okay. Corey.
So I sort of was always drawn to like production work, and live audio was always my thing. So in college, got involved with a couple of bands, did some small tours, got out of college, and actually I started working here And that's sort of where production started for me. So I was doing video production for the university, running camera. And then a couple years into that, I came over here to start working in the College of Fine Arts. And I had just sort of dabbled in stuff and done things. And actually, Dave had a gig that came up with a digital audio console that he didn't know. So he was asking me, like, how do I get through this? And I was like, I can go along and help out. So that's sort of where it all started, and it just branched out into a lot of Missouri Valley Conference stuff, doing audio and video for. And somehow I also got involved with IHSA championship sports for football and basketball as well. So did that for many years, so it just sort of snowballed. I don't really remember how it all got to where it did, but somehow it did, and I'm really glad it did. So.
Very good. I wondered if you'd tell that story.
Yeah, it was you.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we traded. Because I taught him intercom and IFB and that sort of thing, and then he taught me digital audio boards.
Yeah.
Joey.
Yeah, similar to Lee, I think back to when I was in high school, was able to get a lot of great opportunities early, right off the bat. Public access television station back in Urbana, streamed at the time. I don't think they still do it anymore, but they streamed all of the Urbana High School football, basketball, baseball games, not all of them, but most of them. So was able to help out with that, get a good start there. I was able to start working at the News-Gazette as a senior. My senior year of high school, they have a program. It's in year 8 now. I was part of the second class of high school confidential correspondence, and that's pretty much where you write a weekly column just about what's happening in your high school. So that led to some part-time and internship opportunities, and carried all that over to here at Bradley. Was able to get involved with Braves Vision right out of the gates. A lot of great opportunities there. The Scout, BUTV, as Dave mentioned. And sophomore year, and I see a lot of familiar faces here from Clutch Sports Media, which is great to see. But my sophomore year, as was mentioned, Larry Larson and I started Clutch. Initially, it was just to get some more on-air opportunities for Larry and I. We both wanted to do play-by-play, and that still is, I think, the goal for both of us in kind of a roundabout way. But that started as audio broadcast, then we expanded to video broadcasts. Now we have a paywall, which hosts a lot of great written content. So that's kind of expanded to a true multimedia operation, if you will. So yeah, was able to get involved early, and after graduation, moved back to Champaign and took a job at the News-Gazette. Still do a lot with Clutch, so that's and with Brian too on a freelance basis. So that's kind of where we're at.
Very good. So I hinted at this in the intro. I think the elephant in the room these days with production is the idea of doing remote productions. And Brian, I want to kick it off with you. If people don't know what that is, explain what it is and a little bit of the backbone technology.
Yeah, I mean, as it relates to sports, I think first let's go back to how we used to do things back in the day. I mean, things have changed over the years, but to do a typical college basketball broadcast even 10 years ago, you needed a big, giant production truck and a crew of 20 people, average. We started transitioning more toward remote production right before COVID, but then COVID hits and we can no longer send 20 people to a basketball game. We're only allowed to send 6 people to make the show happen. So during COVID, there was this shift toward remote production where you only have maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 people on site doing the cameras, some of the audio stuff, but then back wherever, in a different control room, different location, you have the director, the producer, the graphics people doing the actual production remotely. So there's a lot of technology involved to make all that happen, and all the video paths and audio paths to make that all happen. But I was kind of forced into it because of COVID to switch directions with my business to adapt to the remote production world. So, I mean, lots of times now this weekend we're doing a national broadcast, and I think we have maybe 12 people, but still there's just as many people in Indianapolis producing the game, and we're going to be in Chicago. So that's the new norm for us, if that helps answer that question at all.
Yeah, and it does offer some efficiencies too, because that control room, they're not people that you had to travel in to the site. They can
Correct.
go do another game for the other 3
And I
hours
also,
of your shift.
and then actually on Sunday when we're doing that game, that same Indianapolis crew is doing a college baseball or softball game Sunday evening, 4 or 5 hours after our rugby broadcast. So while we're on site in Chicago doing rugby, those 12 people in Indianapolis are turning around 4 or 5 hours later and doing a different national broadcast, and no one knows. I mean, like, it's not a big deal. Like, that's what they do.
So you guys are all from kind of different parts of this. And Joey, you represent a couple different levels here. I want to talk to Lee. We'll start with you. I really want to know how you got involved, because you're on the talent side, and you're doing these remote.
Yeah.
And I use that term loosely.
Loosely, yes.
So you're doing broadcasts of basketball from all over the world from your house.
Right.
Talk
Yeah.
about how that came about.
Well, as he was just saying, I mean, back in the day when we did Bradley basketball games on Channel 25, there'd be a crew come in, 20 people. They'd be running cable and stuff the night before the game, working all the way up until the game started, and then, through half the night, tearing it all down. And we would travel to different places that were in the Missouri Valley back then, Wichita, Tulsa, and you just had to work with whoever was there. So you had no idea, nobody knew each other's expectations or anything. So it was a little more difficult as opposed to now. Fast forward to now, I'm doing kind of what Brian talked about. Actually, we were doing, I remember it distinctly, it was the state football championships in DeKalb at Northern Illinois University, November, the day after Thanksgiving in 2019. And their press box is a piece of junk. It's from like the 1940s or something.
It's a chicken coop.
And then, so we're in this like bunker next to it, which is the athletic director's box. So instead of having windows, they had these little doors that went up and down. They look like garage doors. They're metal. You can't see through them. So we're doing the game, and it's raining, and the wind starts blowing directly across. I mean, it was so bad they couldn't keep the lenses clear on the cameras. And everybody I knew was texting me, "Can you tell them that they can't see the glass, the windows, blah, blah, blah. The cameras are all wet." Oh, they didn't know that. But so that rain starts blowing in on us and in on the computers and the electricity and everything else. So we had to shut those doors. And of course, we had a couple of monitors there. So we're doing the game without being able to see it, which was like crazy, different, new thing. And my partner is even older than me, and he's a former Marine. And he's like, "We're flying on instruments," which is like when you learn how to fly, you can't see anything. So that was my first remote broadcast. And now there's a guy in Bloomington who was a PR guy they had a semi-pro basketball team over there that a bunch of Bradley guys played on, a bunch of ISU guys played on. Somehow or another, he got fixed up with doing games with FIBA, the Federal International Basketball Association, and traveled actually to Central America and different places to do these games. Well, as the technology progressed, he started doing them remotely. And now, I asked him if he would include me if he needed some help. So I've done games from the Puerto Rican Professional League, which had a ton of talent, guys that were top NBA draft picks. One guy had played for Kentucky when they won the national title. Italy, and then I've done, most recently, a lot of games from Belgium. So it's pretty cool. I'm in my living room in Morton, Illinois, about 10 miles from here. My color commentator was in Brazil because he's a basketball scout kind of coach kind of thing. The game was in Belgium, and the crew, like you said that yours was in Indianapolis, these guys were in Argentina. So, try to figure all that out. So it's crazy, but it's amazing to see what has become from what we used to do many years ago, where you had to have a satellite truck and all these different things.
What do you prefer for being on air? Do you prefer sitting in your living room and not having to travel, or would you rather see everything with your own
I'd
eyes?
love to have them send me to Italy or Belgium to, to do the games live, of course. No, I mean, you can't, it's so much more preferable to do the game, obviously, in person because you get a better feel for what's going on. I did a couple of IHSA super sectional games a couple weeks ago, and I was actually in the arena and had a partner doing the game with me, which a lot of games I haven't had that. So it was really strange to kind of be back in that original atmosphere. But yeah, doing the games live is much more preferable. But the fact that you can do them that way is still pretty amazing.
Yeah. Corey and Joey, like, so from the other side of it, from the crew side of it, what kind of opportunities has this created for you guys, or what's your experience with it? Because Corey, I know you've done some other than just Brian.
So Brian talked about, one of these big facilities where they can do multiple broadcasts. So I've actually done some of those. I've worked with a company out of Madison, Wisconsin that I think they can do up to 6 broadcasts at once. And this particular company had the WNBA, the entire WNBA contract. So yeah, it's crazy on those game days. Like, there are just people everywhere, and it's a hive of activity. And these people are just churning things out left and right. So yeah, they'll do a game, and then they'll schedule maybe 2 hours off so you can prep for the next thing, and they just move straight on to the next thing. Which, if I were trying to do that, like, that's a lot mentally to handle, because there's a lot that goes into a broadcast other than you just showing up. Like, there are stats, there are highlight packages, there are graphics. There's a lot that goes into it. So it's pretty interesting and neat to see an operation like that from that side of it.
So I'd ask you the same question. Which do you prefer? Because like you and I have done a lot of work together on site. Does it sort of absolve you of some responsibility when you don't have to say like, oh, I'll just walk out there and see what the problem is?
It's different responsibility. So just like we're covering sports teams, a broadcast crew is almost like a team in itself. You really have to rely on each other. You have to trust each other's skills, that people know what they're going to do. So with those remote broadcasts, it sort of throws you into, there's somebody on the other end that you don't know personally, but you have your trust in, that they're going to know. Like, if you ask them to do something like, this isn't working, go troubleshoot it, like, you have to trust that that person's going to do it, and they have to pull it off for you. And if not, you have to have the skills to be able to have that conversation over a cell phone to walk them through, hey, this is what I need, this is what I need you to look at.
Or throw them under the bus to your producer.
You could
I have a crappy A2 on site, what am I going to do?
Yeah. So I don't know, it's just different. And then as an operator, so I've also been, running a camera for a remote broadcast. The big difference there is on the communication side, there's a delay that happens. And it's inevitably somebody's going to, pan at the wrong time or zoom at the wrong time and stuff like that. So it puts a lot of the responsibility on the director or producer to give you a heads up and sort of slow down their calls and give you, hey, ready camera 2, and wait a couple of beats, take camera 2, just so they don't have, stepping on people like that. So I don't know if I have a preference. Maybe from that perspective, the live traditional sort of broadcast is a little bit easier. But the remote stuff also has created some new opportunities. On the audio side, there's an audio protocol called Dante Audio, and it's all digital. So on a big broadcast, you'll have a box that you'll go set next to a hoop, and you run your microphones and stuff into that, and there's one network cable that goes from the hoop back to the central point, and then that all goes back to the truck. So it takes a little bit of the responsibility off of that person being the A2 to troubleshoot things, because it either works or it doesn't. And if it doesn't work, then you go to the truck, who's called the engineer in charge, and you tell them, hey, this isn't working, and they start to do all the troubleshooting and make it work. Because if it's connected to a network cable, it should work. So I don't know, it's just different. They each have their pluses and minuses, but from that perspective, it's made things a little easier on the production side.
Brian, you had something to add?
Yeah, sorry, Joey.
No,
I was going to say, when we do a big broadcast, my job is to be the engineer in charge. If something's not working, it's my problem to fix it ASAP. Doing more REMI or remote production stuff, game day is a lot less stressful for me, mostly, because I don't have to worry about the video switcher not working, the replay machine not working. any crewing issues they're having in Indianapolis, like that's not my problem, and I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But we just have to make sure that the stuff that is on site is working. So from my perspective, from a business owner, it costs less money to own all the equipment, and it's a little bit less stressful for me on game days because there's just half the people to worry about and half the equipment to worry about.
So Joey, since you're kind of a recent grad, you're pretty new to the industry. You know, we're all grizzled veterans here, and so we know what the old way of doing things is. And you've kind of this is kind of, I guess, Clutch. You guys do stuff on site.
Sure.
So I same question. Which way do you prefer?
You know, I think there is, as Corey said, pros and cons. Pros and cons, right? I was thinking of like a typical Bradley baseball, softball, volleyball game in Morton at Brian's studio. It's great. You know, you've got your commentators off site, but they're just a stone's throw away from the director, the producer, replay. So you can kind of huddle up with those guys until right before you record your open and go on the air. And you've still got your talk back, but you know, you can duck out during a commercial break and have a word. I mean, I think there's a setup like that. There's good opportunity for dialogue, and there's some good opportunity to kind of work through some things. Lee was talking about calling games off a monitor. I think it's something that everyone should get experience with if they can, through Braves Vision, through whatever, just because it seems like more is going that way. So it's definitely a good skill to have. I'm not going to say that it's any better than being on site, but I think it's doable. You need good camera operators, I think, to really make something like that work. But if you've got a good crew, you know, it can work out. But Clutch, we kind of do things the old school way, if you will, where everything's on site. We're taking our camera there. We're taking all our audio equipment, commentators, and most often, you know, you'll find us in the top row of the bleachers or on top of the press box, what have you, and all within 2 or 3 rows of each other. So.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah,
So I just worked an event not too long ago. It was a basketball event. It was the first national broadcast of this college, so it was kind of a big deal. And so they brought in these guys. One of the announcers was from Houston. The other announcer was from Los Angeles. And so I was doing audio support, so I was sitting right behind those guys and just taking care of whatever. And so during the broadcast, they see the mascot. The mascot is this bulldog. So it immediately went to, hey, go grab that guy. Go grab the dog and bring him over here. And they did a segment live with the dog sitting there talking with the handler and all that stuff. So I'm just thinking, you know, if you're in your living room, in your bathrobe doing your broadcast, it's stuff like that you're not going to really see. That's sort of the disconnect in the remote broadcast world. So
You're only as good as your camera, whatever your camera apps show you.
yeah.
And honestly, this is exactly the answers I expected, is that Lee, having done it the old way for such a long time, that you probably don't necessarily, if you'd rather be on site, whereas Joey, you're encouraging people to
Sure.
make sure that they know how to do it this way.
And depending on the sport that you're calling, you could be calling it a lot off the monitor anyways, right? Like
Sure.
if it's something like golf, if it's something, you know, where you've got this big area, you're probably not looking out at the field as much, or you're looking for your replay, or, you know, something like that. So really, when you're calling a high-level show like that, I find a lot of times you're looking at the monitors anyway to see what graphics are up, to see what the viewer's seeing. So it definitely, you know, to Corey's point, helps to be there for things like that, those little details that you definitely can't spot off a monitor unless you happen to have a shot of it. But I don't think it's an inherently bad thing. The job doesn't change at all. Speaking, you know, on the air, play-by-play, color, what have you.
I was just going to throw in there, I worked with a guy when I was a sideline reporter for the Missouri Valley tournament. His name doesn't matter. But he would go to Bristol, Connecticut, to the ESPN studios, and they would ship, back at that time, they would ship tapes over from the Premier League, and he would watch the videotapes and announce the games that way. So it's not as new an idea as we think it is. It's a different way of doing it, obviously, but
Yeah.
you know, there's some precedent there too.
Interesting.
Real quick, Corey mentioned the mascot idea of the talent seeing the mascot in the venue and wanting to do a segment on it. We did a couple recent ESPNU broadcasts of college basketball, and our client that we were working for sent us a robotic camera that we're supposed to put by where the talent would sit. And actually, in Indianapolis, the talent had their own joystick, and that camera never made it on air. like no one at home ever saw it. It was literally for the
Oh,
talent
cool.
to sit there and look around the arena. And I thought that's a cool, simple idea
It is.
that they started doing for a couple of the games. So it's a little more work for us to run another cable to set a camera up, but that gives the talent their own eyes in the arena for, you know, a relatively simple setup. So.
Cool.
I want to shift gears here to kind of more of the business side, and we'll start with you, Joey. Like, where's your next? This is a very gig-based kind of thing that we all do. Where does your next job come from? Where, like, how does that work in Clutch? Who's drumming up that new business?
Sure, no, that's a good question. So we do a lot of our, I would describe it as we do a lot of regular season football, basketball, baseball, softball games. We're just looking for the best games, finding kind of those games of the week, if you will, emailing ADs, calling them up, saying, hey, can we come out and...
So you're pitching to them.
Correct. And we run into some issues with playoffs. You know, as our crew well knows, NFHS Network has some jurisdiction over, I just say playoff games. That's a different topic. But a lot of our clients come from tournaments, shootouts, different events like that during basketball season mostly. But like we work with the Peoria Sunday Morning League, we work with the Dunlap JFL to do their games. So different tournaments, different teams, different leagues will come to us with a need, right? They want their games to go out. They want a good high-level production. And that's where a lot of that'll kind of, those are some of our big ticket items, if you will.
So it's
That's
not
what kind of drives
necessarily,
us. Yeah.
you're not just sitting by the phone waiting for it to ring. You're actively out there.
Yeah, and we're looking for big events, big tournaments. We do the Tournament of Champions in Washington, the State Farm Holiday Classic. We did a shootout at Manual. I think we did one in Clinton too in early January, and then Sunday Morning League, JFL, other things. So we're looking to see, hey, does it make sense maybe for us to pitch to these organizers, let us come in and do your tournament. And we're looking for, too, the best games that we kind of have to go out and hunt for, because we do bring in a lot of our money through advertising. So obviously we want to find matchups that are appealing and we can get advertisers on board for. We also have a partnership with WMBD TV here in Peoria that's been good, and they kind of work with us to help sell, and which is good, really good, and help us find some of those big games. So that helps, too.
Corey, same question.
Yeah, I don't know. You just have to say yes to as many things as you can. Like, if an opportunity presents itself, like, find a way to make it happen. And when you're at that event, really dedicating yourself 100% to that, asking questions, asking if there are other opportunities. If you see somebody doing something that you don't know about, ask questions like, what is that? And if you're going to do that sort of stuff, it's going to lead to more opportunities. In looking at all of you, I see a lot of college-age kids here, and I've probably worked with some of you on some of these broadcasts. And one criticism I'm going to say, and something to really get away from in life, is that device that's your face is always in front of. And I know it's information always there, but if you're working a
It's not the
broadcast,
camera. It's not the camera. It's the
yeah,
other thing.
right. Put it away and get to know the people around you and look for those opportunities, because that's going to lead to more stuff. Some other things too, like when you do get in the industry, if you find something that you really like, there's a lot of turnover to who's broadcasting and in control of certain things. So especially, I don't know if Lee ever had this issue, but with the high school championship stuff, that turned over several times when I did it over the 10 years. And I would have to reach out to companies, and I wasn't necessarily begging them, but I had to really let them know, like, I really want to work this event. Like, I really enjoy these events, and I really want to work it. So what is it going to take for me to be a part of that? And this is my skill set, so on and so forth. So you really have to sell yourself.
If I could add to that, you never know who's watching, right? So always want to make good impressions. You never know, who from an event might be looking, who might need help down the line. So
Yeah.
in all facets.
It's like Santa.
He's
always
exactly.
watching.
Exactly.
Always watching.
Someone's
Now,
always
Lee Hall, I know Lee Hall just sits by the phone and waits for it to ring.
Well, some of that's true. I did IHSA basketball and football. I started off as the sideline guy, but I always wanted to be the play-by-play guy. And I did that for almost 30 years. And then, as Corey was saying, there's production companies that they contract to do those games for like 3 years. And it turned over late 90s. It was Chicago Sports Channel. I can't remember what the iteration of it was then, but they come in and they don't give a crap who you are or how long you've done it. They brought in their talent from Chicago, and I was out. And all the guys were out that had done the games. And then it turned back over, and then we came back. Well, now, the last couple of years, another Chicago company took over, and I was the only one they got rid of from the on-air crew, which kind of obviously pissed me off, pardon my language. But that's the nature of the beast. So those opportunities went away, but because I had done those, a guy from the NFHS network, which is really hard to say if you try and say it fast, kind of like IHSA.
Yep.
Try it at home, kids. So he approached me, and I'm able to do. I did high school state soccer. I've done softball now. I just did the super sectional games. So, yeah, you kind of, they said, the more you do, the more opportunity comes along. So I do kind of wait for the phone to ring a little bit, just from the quote unquote talent side of it, because I have another full-time job. But when I hear about stuff. There's a company over in the Quad Cities that does a lot of high school remote play-by-play that I'm trying to get in with. So, yeah, anything you can do. And when I started on the IHSA, I wanted to be the play-by-play guy, but they had an opening to do the sideline stuff, so I did that. So I've just always tried to make myself, when I've had the opportunities, to be to the point where they couldn't live without me, maybe indispensable or whatever, just do whatever needs done.
Yeah.
As we're sitting here talking, it's pretty incredible too, if you think about it, how much high school work that we've all done.
Oh, yeah.
And what sort of a market that is and how that's changed in the last 15 years. It's crazy what high schools are doing now. There are a lot of high schools out there that have full-time people, one, sometimes multiple people doing broadcast for them. There's a huge need. So as you get out and you graduate and you're thinking about getting into this, don't forget about those avenues, because they're definitely out there.
I've done games for Morton High School, and their crew and equipment. I mean, it's a lot better than some of the Bradley games we did over the years on the road. It's really top notch. Good stuff.
I remember when the Missouri Valley Conference was considering their ESPN contract, and I remember someone from the Valley saying, if all of these games, if they're not somewhere, they're nowhere. So if these college softball games aren't streamed on the internet, they're nowhere. No one can see them. So the goal with the Missouri Valley Conference and ESPN was to get as much as possible out there. Going back to the crewing part of it, I'm kind of on the other side, where I'm usually the one, not hiring, but coordinating the crews and essentially hiring the crews. It's a lot of word of mouth too, from my end. I mean, a good third of you have worked for me in this room, I think, including all 4 of these.
Yeah, right.
Dave used to be my professor, but he
work
fills
for
in
you.
on the weekends for us too. So, but there are resources too, like on Facebook, there's a crewing group. There are TV freelancer groups. There's plenty of opportunities if you go out there and look for them. And this is not really sports related, but on that crewing group on Facebook a couple weeks ago, there was a company looking for someone to cover an air show. I don't know if I told you this yet, Dave, but I got the contract today. So
Nice.
Someone from our freelancer group tagged me saying, hey, there's this event in Wisconsin. You'd be good for it. And then 10 days later, they signed the contract today, and we're doing like a $30,000 air show in Wisconsin. So
Cool.
Facebook, networking, word of mouth is kind of how the crewing world works.
It takes time to get to the point where you can just sit and wait by the phone.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
A lot of work to get there.
Yeah. Oh, and it was actually one of my competitors who recommended me. So
Which one?
Nate,
Oh, really?
yeah, he couldn't do it. So
Oh, well, there you go.
yeah.
Let's shift again to a different kind of production, and we'll stay with you, Brian. So you recently picked up doing Civic Center video, and that's something that a lot of venues have video as part of the scoreboard, or just animations that get
Sure.
run, sponsored stuff. how is that different from a TV show or a broadcast?
Well, I mean, if you think about Bradley basketball or Peoria Rivermen, it's fan entertainment, it's fan engagement, it's family nights, it's Thursday night dollar beer night, or like that type of stuff where, yes, there's a game going on, but it's also an entertainment factor as well. You could probably speak to that too, but about a year ago we were approached to do the video board stuff at the Civic Center. It's an entirely different broadcast. If we're doing the game for ESPN, we're producing and documenting the event for the viewers at home. When we're doing the video board in the arena, the people are already watching the game. They're wanting close-ups, they're wanting us to cause drama in the arena between the sets of fans. Like last night at Loyola, we'd put on the Loyola fans, the crowd would boo. Put on some Bradley fans, crowd would go crazy. Loyola fans, there'd be some booing. Like, it's a different broadcast when you're doing the arena stuff, which is actually kind of fun because it breaks the mold of what I've been trained to do for 15, 20 years. So it's a different audience. They're there for a different purpose, and we have a different purpose as well.
And you get instant feedback.
Yeah, we can hear the boos. We can hear when we're showing a replay in slow motion and it clearly goes against, or it was called against Bradley, but it was clearly in Bradley's favor, the crowd just goes crazy because we're showing a replay up there and you've got 10,000 sets of eyes watching it. Instant feedback, yeah.
So Lee, same kind of thing. You do broadcasts, but you also do PA work. You don't do Dozer anymore, like you don't do
No,
the Chiefs. Okay.
no.
But you've done that before, so you've done
Did it for a
baseball,
couple of years, yeah.
and you've done lots and lots of basketball as well, taking over for Paul Herzog. So like, what's different in that sort of thing versus broadcasting, and like what do you have more fun doing?
That's a good question. I love doing the play-by-play. For some reason, I love doing the research. I mean, I will spend every waking hour doing research for games that are coming up, just because you can never have too much information when you're in that role, I don't feel like.
How big are your notes when you come to a game?
When I do a basketball game, it's a manila folder that opens up, and there's a page for each team. My football thing is about like that. So you can, like I say, you can never have too much information. As far as doing the PA, the only preparation I do for that is finding somebody from the other team and make sure I know how to pronounce the names. Now, when we did Bradley games, when I do IHSA or Bradley, especially IHSA, I mean, you have to play it down the middle, right? I mean, you can get excited for either team, but you don't want to lean one way or the other. Now, last night, the NIT has these special rules, and as the PA guy, it said you have to be impartial, you can't favor the home team, and just general PA, which like, and the NIT guy was sitting right here, so I felt like I was taking a test right next to the teacher. But
Did you pass?
so my thing, usually when the visitors score, I act like I'm barely awake and just bored as I can be. Dave Lennie, whatever. And then last night when Duke Dean threw the alley-oop to Darius Hannah, I was like, oh my God, Darius Hannah. Whereas if it would have been a regular game, I would have said, Darius Hannah is like, and then from Dean. And that just, I think like in that role, you're there to kind of help get the crowd going. Obviously the play does too, more so than what I'm saying, but it just kind of helps build that crescendo, I think. So my thing all year was I wish, like when I introduced Duke Dean, that everybody would do Duke with me. But now that's not really original or anything, but now they're doing it on their own after I introduce him, so that's pretty cool. But so that's fun. It's fun to be able to be a little bit prejudicial when you're behind the microphone. So when I did full disclosure, I spent a year at St. Ambrose College. I did a year at ICC, and then I finished at Illinois State. Sorry. So as an ISU alum and a guy that went to Bradley games as a kid, I was doing Bradley ISU games, and I was hated equally in both communities. So I figured I was doing my job, you know. The Bradley fans thought I was an ISU fan, and the ISU fans thought I was a Bradley fan. So you have to play it, you know, down the middle. So the PA, I don't have to worry about that. Well, I did last night.
But that's rare, right? Is that?
Oh yeah, I
is
mean,
that just an NIT thing?
I didn't even know that was a rule. I'm like, well, why the hell are they having a home game then? Was it
Did
you
you
that,
have to
was
find
it,
that?
Was it you that sent me the thing like fans are allowed to clap 5 times?
that was
Like
me.
there's all these rules. Like, no, they sent it out.
Oh,
They
to make
sent it
sure
out.
that you
Even from
know.
the arena perspective, like Civic Center had to cover up pretty much any corporate sponsor.
Yeah.
You know, it couldn't say Morton Buildings as a sponsor on the floor. It had to be an NIT logo. So how that works is NIT was renting out the Peoria Civic Center for a game. That was not a Bradley game.
Right.
It was an NIT sanctioned, essentially NIT paid the money to rent the building. They can do what they want with it. So,
Yeah.
and Bradley just happened to be the home team.
It's always interesting to hear how the money flows because it always seems to be not what you
I
expect.
get it, but sometimes even I don't understand who's paying for whatever game we're doing.
Yeah. I want to talk about the future, and then we'll open up to some questions. So, you know, the big innovations of broadcasting typically start at big events, national televised events like the Super Bowl or the Olympics. That's where like the tech is at the top of its game. You're seeing the best of the best. And then over time, those things become part of a lot of broadcasts, even down to the smaller level. So I want to start with Joey. Like, how long before you guys do a football game that has the first down line with just, you know, a laptop doing that, or something like that, or augmented reality graphics floating over
Sure.
a court, something like that?
That's a great question, and I think, you know, we don't have, frankly, much of a budget, right? It's very, you know, we do what we can. So I think that forces us to get pretty creative when we want to innovate, right? I mean, it's really searching the depths of the internet. Hey, what software is out here that, you know, you use the first down line as an example. I mean, that's technology that, you know, you need your own truck for that, or at least at one time you did. You need these special cameras that are analyzing the field and, you know, making a diagram and sending it to all these machines. You need all this stuff. And then maybe we find a software that, you know, $20 a month, somehow it can magically do it for you, or a version of it. So you're always kind of looking for things like that. I think it's, I mean, stuff like, our goal is always to deliver a broadcast that resembles what folks might see at home when they're watching, you know, the Packers or the, you know, Cardinals, what have you, you know, their favorite teams. So always looking for how can we bring replay into our broadcasts and make it look good, or how can we bring the first down line in. We were close to adding a drone for our football coverage a few months ago. That would have been really cool, and want to see if that's something we can do in the future. But just those little things. But at Clutch, you know, we kind of go as the professional broadcasts go, for lack of a better word. We're trying to take those elements and somehow deliver them on a budget that's not very big. So that's where expertise of others comes from, you know, good mentors like Brian and folks that can give us the right equipment, give us the right tools, and then we can go out and somehow make it work.
Corey, you and I have done a lot of games where the audio is good enough. We just keep it simple. But then, like, we would do IHSA and we roll out everything. Like, we have more resources. It was typically a bigger truck. Not always, but that's when you would do more. Like, something I found out recently is that they mic the offensive line in NFL games. They're wearing not just one wireless mic, they're wearing two. One in the front, one in the back. And they're only allowed to have it up for a certain amount of time before they have to fade it out because they don't want to hear too much. How long before that becomes a standard? You know, like, or what do you think the next big innovation on the audio side is?
I really am not sure. I was just, as people are talking here, I'm just thinking of, is virtual reality, watching sporting events, virtual reality, is that still a thing, or do they give up on that? Or they put like a 360-degree camera and it's like you were sitting in the seat?
It is a thing. We were doing a game in, I know John Michael remembers, we were doing a game at Manual a few weeks ago, and YouTube has an option for a 360-degree video stream, and we accidentally enabled that. I don't know how. And I think we unlisted the stream, but you can go back and watch it, and it's like if you're not watching with VR goggles, it's like it's a circle. Like, it's hard to explain. Like, it's just
Right.
we're like, what's going on? So we had to stop that stream and add a new one.
Yeah.
I don't know who does it, but YouTube lets you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think no matter what event we're doing, the most important thing is the content. Like, people want to see the event, and if it's not the greatest thing in the world, sometimes that's okay. And so I don't know, anything with, if you're talking about miking up linemen, the cost of that adds up really fast, as Brian can attest to. If you're talking $1,000 per microphone that you're adding, and it's going to be beat around and destroyed
And sweaty.
like, Brian's not going to get behind that. Like, he doesn't want to make that investment. That's not a good investment for him as a businessman. It would be cool.
We do a lot of outdoor sporting events and rain and sweat.
Yeah.
So that $1,000 mic may only last a year. So,
Or
Yeah.
a game.
or a game.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's one thing as Disney's pushing a lot of this, and Disney has a lot of money. Brian Scheffler doesn't have that same budget, so there are some of the limitations that you're going to run into.
Sorry.
Lee, what's in your crystal ball?
I don't have one.
I just talk when they tell me to.
No,
AI announcers?
well, who knows? The thing about doing this job now is the decline of newspapers has really hurt my ability to do a lot of research, where it was, when the internet came along, it was great. You could get on websites all over, the state and find little articles on everything. And now nobody covers anything hardly. So it's kind of gone backwards as far as that goes. But I just don't know that there's a better way of doing the play-by-play and the color commentator job than being right there. I don't know what they would do. It'd be interesting to see.
Yeah.
You got to do more games in the News Gazette's here. Yeah, we'll get you taken care of.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm available.
sure.
I got a card here somewhere.
Brian, what do you see coming down the pike?
I don't know, but from a business perspective, like, I kind of have to be ready. Like, we're not going to jump in tomorrow if a client says, hey, buy this $1 million piece of equipment. Like, I'm going to say, in a couple of years, we'll try it. But from the business perspective, I just need to be kind of prepared for whatever they throw at us. So I don't know. I'm curious to find out, but have to adapt from the business perspective.
I remember when WCIU made you buy the delay box, the
Yes.
7-second delay.
I
or
don't know that it
10-second
ever
delay.
ever got used.
I don't think it did.
Yeah,
And
we
then
had a client, we did Chicago Public League games, and these games were airing on local TV, so there was more scrutiny over what was seen and heard on the air. So part of the contract with the client was, hey, you need to go buy this sensor device so the producer can hit a button, and they've got the 7 seconds of delay. But I don't know that it ever.
They never hit the button.
I don't know, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't really know, I guess.
Oh, I think
If things worked properly, I wouldn't know.
true.
But-
It just like bailed to a wide shot, didn't it? When you hit
Yeah.
the button and
Yeah,
muted
muted the audio and just a big wide shot of the arena.
Yeah.
So I was going to say some of the new things or the fun technology things, the rugby broadcast we're doing, it's Major League Rugby's only been in the U.S. for, I think this is the second or third year. But we do all the Chicago games, and all of the officials, are there 4 of them?
I'm not sure.
Sure.
All the officials are wearing microphones and earpieces so they can talk to each other, but the production company has access to that audio so they can listen into the refs, what are they, rugby's new to me.
I've never
But
covered
the viewer can, and the officials know this, the viewer can hear the conversations going on between the officials. That's fun, but also they have a video review person, official review person in New York, wherever, someone in an office somewhere, and there's a camera on this guy or this lady who's watching them do the official replay, and you can hear the communication between the replay operator and the officials on the court.
Field.
The field, the pitch.
Pitch.
Pitch. They're talking, and the players can't hear it, but the viewers can hear all of that. So I thought that was cool and a new thing, and it's kind of fun.
And it doesn't take that much to do it.
Not on our end, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing too, is like, other than maybe camera ops, well, and of course the talent, you don't necessarily need to know how the game works.
Right.
Like I still don't understand the basic rules of rugby, and I've done, I don't know, a dozen of those.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That just reminds me of a funny story from IHSA basketball one year. We
Uh-oh.
would do these, it's called an oh by the way. So when you would go to a break and everybody would be in a timeout, we would take a camera and a microphone and go to the huddle. Well, we did this one oh by the way, and somehow the coach didn't understand that this was not live. And he's just laying into his team. He's letting it fly. And he looks over and he sees the camera and the microphone there, and you could see the guy's face just drop. He thought it was over, like his career was done, because he thought this was going out live in the broadcast. And so, fortunately, that didn't happen.
We
But
didn't
it's just-
air that one, right?
Oh no.
Didn't
no.
you say something
would
like
not.
we should not
Well,
air
and they
that?
were listening in, so the replay op who was capturing that would know this guy's just going on a tirade. Please don't play that, because this guy, we're going to ruin this guy's career. But it's stuff like that. You know, communication is key. Hey, officials, you're live, and
Yeah.
you could
Yep.
go on the air at any time. So
Well, let me just say this. If you're wearing a microphone, assume it's on and assume you're on the air, because I am the guy that said the F-bomb on the air and didn't get fired.
When was that? Let's go to the
Let's
videotape.
go to the video. I don't know. It was,
Is it on YouTube?
no,
Okay.
it was, I wasn't on camera. It's a long story. But I had, it was a Friday night in football season, which is just chaos. And I had to keep, our printer wasn't working, so I had to keep, so I do a set of highlights. The other guy do a set of highlights. While he was doing the 2 sets of highlights, actually, I'd run back into the newsroom through this big garage door that went into the studio and try and get the printer to work. And then I'd run back out and do another set of highlights and go back in. And a particular employee who was kind of a pain in the posterior decided to give me an update on the Cardinals game while I'm in there for I'm on the air, and he's like telling me what the Cardinals did and going into far too much detail. And I'm like, Mark, I can't effing do this right now. I got to get back out there.
I knew it was going to be Mark.
Oh, well, yeah. So, but I mean, I was not in the studio. I wasn't on camera. So my mind, I'm like, I'm not on the air, but the microphone was hot when I was in. So since I didn't purposely say, F you, buddy, they suspended me for a couple of days and took me off the air. So, but that's going to be the title of my biography. Lee Hall, the guy that said the F-bomb on TV and didn't get fired. It's lengthy, but.
So before we take Q&A, weirdest sport that you've ever broadcast? I'll start. I did professional bowling here in town, also gymnastics over at U of I, which was a little weird, doing audio for
Normally,
those.
one must go to a bowling.
Joey, you might not have enough experience yet, but
Well, no, the height of the pandemic, Clutch's first ever video broadcast, because we did audio for our first year, and then COVID hit. We finished, I think, 3rd in the Big Idea competition that Bradley has every year. Won some money, bought some equipment. First event we did was a golf broadcast at Metamora Fields. That was the first one. It was the Middle Illini Conference Boys Golf Tournament, and that went well. We did a sectional at Lick Creek a few weeks later. Because that was it. I mean, that's about the only IHSA sport that we could have done.
golf's not easy to do on the cheap either.
No, I will say Metamora Fields had a great setup for it, though, because you got the 9th and the 18th hole right next to each other, and the clubhouse has a balcony that overlooks both of them. So, I mean, it's not like it wasn't like CBS level, like Masters coverage, but we could get a camera on both the 18th and 9th holes. So that went pretty good. I don't think I've done anything quite as adventurous from a broadcasting perspective.
Yeah.
News Gazette, I cover some, gets a little weirder sometimes.
Corey, you're thinking.
I've had the privilege of micing some people, When you mic people, you get personal. So sometimes that's fun. Sometimes it's really awkward. But I'm just thinking of, we did this event, I think we were all a part of it actually, a golf skills challenge, a Phil Mickelson event.
Oh,
How
yeah.
about that?
Micing up Phil Mickelson was kind of cool, but then we just miking up, they were like chipping into these contraptions that they had built, so figuring
And
out
like
a
breaking
creative
glass,
way.
like who could break the most
yeah,
panes of
this,
glass or
like
something.
30-foot glass wall that they shattered, so just miking things up like that, it's kind of fun. So those are the ones that come to my mind.
I will say occasionally you get a client like that who comes to you and says, we don't have a budget,
Oh,
just
that
make
was-
this work.
That was stupid money.
And I love that when that happens. Air show, for example, but that client was like, I don't even know what the point of that broadcast was.
I don't either.
And we did one for them in
Soldier Field,
at Soldier
too.
Field
Yeah.
too.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. We did do 2 of those.
We couldn't tell you where this aired, what it was for, but Corey mic'd up Phil
It was
Mickelson.
an hour of them just spending money, and yeah, the couple of pro sports events that I've worked, it's stupid money. Like there's just no limit. It's crazy. It's just crazy.
Lou Hill, television.
I haven't done anything crazy.
Really?
No
Just
crazy
straight
sport.
up
I
the
have
middle.
a friend of mine did play-by-play of a robot competition, but no, I'm pretty much furthest I've strayed is like soccer or track and field
Or
just-
international basketball,
or
which I assume
international
is all in
basketball.
English, right?
My part of it is.
Yeah.
The guys in the truck are speaking something else, but yeah.
Are they dubbing it or captioning it in other languages?
No, it's kind of odd. There's one guy. He's been on a couple of different teams, and apparently his father is extremely wealthy, and that's the only reason we're doing the games in English. Is for this one guy,
I think
and I think it's great.
that goes to show that everybody's money is green. Like
Yeah.
there are people who, let's just say they have more money than sense. But I think there's so many outlets now to get this on with the internet.
Well, that's the thing, and you were talking about doing stuff in high school. I mean, when I was in high school, I had one friend that had a VCR. I mean, it's come a long way, baby. So back then you could talk into a tape recorder or something, but it's just the opportunities have just, exploded, which is cool. I've gotten to do a lot of stuff because of that. So
Let's open it up to some questions. What do you guys have for our panelists? Oh, come on. Because I'm out of questions. You guys got to come up with more content here. We got another 15 minutes.
If they don't have questions, I think it's going to be interesting to see where NIL and the mega conference stuff takes all of this, because I think we're on the cusp of I don't know where this is going with especially the mega conference stuff. It's going to be crazy in the next 10 years, and how that filters down to us, especially with college stuff. Is the Missouri Valley still going to exist? Are the broadcast rights still going to be the same? I think that's going to be a really interesting shift.
Yeah. Is the Missouri Valley Conference in a better spot because there are no, we don't have to worry about Illinois State joining the SEC or the Big Ten, departing for some greener pastures.
Yeah.
This is probably a pretty good fit for all of our members, I would think.
Yeah.
Within reason.
yeah, Loyola left, and they got an earful last night.
I heard a couple of MVC chants.
Oh, there was a lot of MVC. Yeah.
I mean, maybe NIL opens up even more broadcast opportunities if you've got a star athlete in gymnastics, or I don't know, maybe it's not a great example, but what's a sport here, Bradley, that we don't currently cover? I mean, we don't
Women's tennis.
Women's tennis. What if there's just a super standout, or a couple super standout women's tennis players? Right now, the money for those broadcasts kind of comes from both the Missouri Valley Conference and ESPN. What if the money comes from a sponsor of this women's tennis athlete,
Or the athlete.
or the athlete to get themselves out there? I don't know. Maybe it's far-fetched. Maybe it's not far-fetched. I don't know.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Harvey.
Burnout is becoming increasingly more common in the sports broadcasting and sports media industry. Whether you guys have or haven't gone through it, what would you say are the best strategies to sort of overcome that while at the same time not sacrificing your career in the process?
What was the first part of that? What's becoming more popular?
Burnout. Well, since I'm the old guy, I'll start. I did sports for 33 years, which is a lot of nights, and I got tired of it, but I loved it at the same time. And the thing was, after a number of years of doing it, you have to constantly challenge yourself, try and grow. I felt like in my mind, I got better every day, every week, trying to write things that were informative and creative. And then after so long a time, one of my coworker, Mark, that I talked about earlier, that frustrated me enough to cuss on TV, but we had done it so many years, kind of like, I was like, a lot of this, I'm just entertaining myself. So you have to have that love of it, but that ability to enjoy it yourself, I think. So it's a job, but it's a fun job. I don't miss working the nights, but I don't miss the deadline pressure. But obviously, I still love that idea of it because I'm still doing so much freelance stuff. But I remember, so Dave and I are huge Seinfeld fans, and I know that's old-timey stuff now, but there was a girl, and if you don't know the series, one of the guys wanted to name his child Seven. George Costanza wanted to name his child Seven. So there was a girl, I saw a story from Springfield that there was a girl in the Springfield area whose name was Seven, which Springfield's not in our coverage area, but she was playing at Lincoln, which is just barely in our coverage area. So I went down there and did a story on her because it was just for my benefit. Just to keep it entertaining. What's that?
And for Dave's benefit, too.
And for Dave's benefit. Giddy up.
I think it's, sorry to cut you off, Lee, if you have any.
No.
I think it's important, especially in an industry like this, to make time for yourself, though, especially during a busy time of year, like coming off of a high school basketball season for Clutch and for the News-Gazette, right after football season. It's a lot of late nights, working till deadline a lot of the time, going out on the road covering games, what have you. So it's important to make time, make sure you're eating right, make sure you're getting exercise in when you can, because, I'm sure these guys can attest, it's easy to hit McDonald's on the way home when you're working until, 11:30, but it's, going to add up, going to catch up with you at some point. So you got to make sure you're still finding the time to take care of yourself and do the right things, even though it can get really busy, certain times of the year.
That was the best advice I got from my boss when I started at the TV station, was have a life outside of here.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that don't.
Well, it took me up until like a couple of years ago to realize that. You okay?
Yep, caught it.
As a business owner, mentally my job is to just get as many jobs as possible, as many contracts, as many games, as many events. And Corey even mentioned earlier, when the opportunities come, take them. Like, that's how I operated for the first 10 years of my business. And it caught up with me with burnout, with COVID. You have to find the time for yourself too. And I struggle with that. I've got 2 little kids at home.
So you have no time to yourself.
I don't have time to begin with, but this week's going to be like a 100-hour work week for me. It's just a crazy week because they added, an NIT game with 24 hours notice. But next week we go on vacation. So take the opportunities as you can, but you have to limit yourself a little bit too. So.
Yeah, I sort of have a different perspective that I did all of this. I've done this all on the side, that I've had a full-time job, and fortunately I've had jobs where I can, work a couple hours in the morning and drive somewhere, do an event, come home, get home late, but do it, just manage it as well as I could. But I would like to point out, we've had a lot of fun doing this. Mm-hmm. We've had some really good tight crews, and so I know that sometimes we've joked, we're going out to eat and we're going to do a game as well. So if you can find a crew like that, it's a lot of fun. And man, I've seen some good games. I have some good memories of buzzer beaters and some performances that are crazy. And as I was preparing for this today, I regularly stop myself during a broadcast, especially when I'm somewhere courtside. I stop and pull the headphones off and just look around and just experience. Like, that's what you're there for. And those are some of my best memories of, last night you have a 40-foot alley-oop at the end of the game, and just hearing the crowd and you're like in front of that. Like, that is so cool, and it's a different perspective that you get when you work in the broadcast world, that like you're literally courtside and you're in the middle of it, and it's really, really cool and a different perspective that most people don't have.
I remember you mentioned taking the headset off. My freshman year, I was running a camera for Brian at the Kaboom Awards, year-end banquet Bradley has, or I don't know if they still do it, but at that time had every year. And I had to take the headset off because the guys in the truck I was cracking up. I was like, I got to take the headset off, or I'm just going to start like laughing through whatever segment this is. So, you get a lot of familiar faces in the crowd with Clutch. Like, I've had a great time with those guys, going out to games and dinners after, staying in hotels at some of those tournaments. It's a lot of fun. So it is.
A lot of fun.
There are certainly moments of levity.
Yeah, and it's like Terre Haute in January. There's nothing better. Like,
The Hote.
I've seen more parts of Illinois and the Midwest than I ever thought I would.
There it
But
is.
hey, it comes with the territory.
From the business side, food keeps your crew happy. There's times when I have got a 10-person crew, like this weekend, the catering bill is like $600. So, and that's for like a breakfast. So, food equals happy people. So, it adds up though.
Any other questions? Well, I was going to end this with what would you say to these students who are mostly students who are preparing to enter the business? I think you've hit on some of this, but maybe summarize it in a couple sentences. Start with you, Brian.
I mean, like I said earlier, a third of you have worked with my company before. So, the 2/3 that haven't, if you're into sports production, there are opportunities here on campus and outside of campus, but there's opportunities if you want them. I've got a former full-timer here in the audience too. So, there's opportunities. Seek them and use those up.
Brian handpicks people from Braves Vision to just go
Yeah.
work directly for him, and that's where the real money is. It's not in Braves Vision.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Lee.
Don't do it. I'm kidding. No, it's been a very fun, rewarding thing. I've interviewed some of the most famous people in the world, Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky. What I would tell you is, and I don't know how this got into my head when I started as an intern at Channel 25, but whatever you're doing, wherever you're going, if you start as an intern or an entry-level employee, do whatever you can to make yourself indispensable. Just, when I started at 25, I wanted to be the sports guy, but I shot a lot of news. I did whatever they needed me to do. So learn it all, whatever it is. If you're TV, production, something completely different beyond your major, just make yourself important, make them need you, is what I would tell you.
Corey.
Yeah, and approach it with humility and just be willing to do what you need to do. Again, have those conversations, be an open book, ask the questions, be curious, just be friendly, and just go after it. Just try to know who you are and what you really like to do, and follow those things. And I think that'll lead to some good things for you. So,
Kind of to echo what Brian said, it's similar. I see a lot of familiar faces out there, but if you want to get involved, maybe you're not already working with Clutch or you're not already working for Brian, reach out. Get involved is the key thing. I mean, no matter what you want to do, whether that's work in production, whether that's be on the air, whether you want to be a journalist, maybe you want to write. I mean, you just can't do that in your dorm room or your apartment or wherever. You got to get out and see the world a little bit and get experience. Maybe that's just going out to a high school game and calling it into a tape recorder. Or maybe that's going out to a high school game and interviewing the coach after and writing a story. It doesn't have to be high school, but I think that's a great way to start. But you just can't do that in your dorm room, right, or apartment or what have you. So you got to get out and you got to get involved. I would say that's full stop. That's kind of where it begins and ends. get out and see the world a little bit.
That was good Ted Lasso advice. Be curious, not
Yeah.
judgmental.
I like that. Yeah.
Well, and something else I thought of too in preparing for this, like when you're watching sports, don't just watch sports for the entertainment. Of course, you can do that, but like pay attention to like what you're watching and what you're hearing, because if you do get into this industry, like if you that camera does that at this point in the game, when you get your opportunity, oh yeah, if that's happening and I've already watched that, that's what I'm going to do. You're just going to duplicate what you've already seen.
Go ahead, Brian. Yeah.
I was just going to real quick, except that kind of rubs off on your family too. I don't know about Dave with you and Thomas. If your little ones are watching TV and they start critiquing like a camera shot, that's kind of a problem. My 7-year-old does that. My 5-year-old's always
Zoom in.
Yeah.
My 5-year-old just asks, which team is Bradley, even if Bradley's not playing. Like, I'm just like, I don't know, the red and white one. But yeah, the 7-year-old will start critiquing certain camera shots.
Yeah.
And I would just add 2 quick things. Attention to detail. Make sure you're doing the little things. Make sure your tripods are leveled and your colors look good and all that stuff. I mean, attention to detail is important. And also, wherever you go, relationships are so important too. I wanted to add that. I mean, that not necessarily production related, but at the News Gazette, that's been really cool in the year and a half I've been there, is how many phone numbers I've gotten, different coaches, different athletes, different people I can call in a pinch if I need a story or something. So, or if I'm out covering a game, what have you. So make sure you're making relationships. Be easy to work with. Be nice. Again, you never know who's watching. So.
And make sure you know how to spell the person's name if
Yes.
you're typing it in graphics or typing it into a story, because that you lose credibility immediately if you don't do that right.
And pronounce it right too.
Right.
Sure, yeah.
Big round of applause for our panelists. Dr. Dickhouse has a few words.
Yeah.
I would like to also thank our panelists, all of the guests we had here, all of you who attended our panels. We really appreciate it. This concludes our 7th Charlie Steiner Symposium on Sports Communication. If you do have any additional questions, the panelists will be around for a couple minutes if you want to come up and ask them something. But thank you again for coming.